Well, look carefully at your check. Now, you'll notice a bunch of lines on your check. There's the top line that says pay to, and then there's the next line down that says, you write in cursive the amount. But if you look at your signature line, does that look the same? It's not a line at all. It is text, which means Sterling signing her check, she doesn't actually own the bank account. She's signing on behalf of the bank.
What does the Federal Reserve do then? Right? Because I think they're managing everything. Like I always look on the bank and it always says like this, Federal Reserve insured, right? And so, I think that they've got it all under control, but maybe I really don't know exactly what they're doing. Now that you mentioned,
they definitely have it under control. I mean, there's dozens of trillions of dollars that move in the United States every day. So, they got the commerce thing under control. It's important to remember why Americans came to North America, why English and French and Spanish came here to settle. And that was to get away from tax, some religious things, but generally so that they could keep the money that they earned. And in America, there was no tax until 1917, 18. But one of the things that the founding fathers set up for America was that there would never, ever be a national bank, that the government would have some kind of a bank, because every time that was set up in England or France or Spain, the people were impoverished. The government was able to capitalize and monopolize and manipulate the money system, and then can make sure there were haves at the very top and have-nots at the bottom. So twice, people in Congress tried to enact a national bank. And every time they tried, the smart folks who knew what they were up to, even though they tried to couch it in different ways, saying, well, but see, we are in trouble. After the Civil War, they tried it. They couldn't get it to work because they're like, we know what that is, and we're not dumb enough. It's only been 100 years since we started this America thing. No national bank. Power to the people, small federal government virtually, and power to the states. But some very sneaky, cunning individuals realized that, well, if we don't call it a national bank, if we call it something else, and we enact it in Congress while most of Congress is on vacation during the last Congress of the year in December, where everybody's kind of on holiday. In those days, very hard couldn't just fly in, you had to ride or drive, and if you were rich enough to have a car. So most of Congress was out when they passed the Federal Reserve System bills. And the Federal Reserve, underneath all of its bells and whistles, is a national bank. Illegal to the Constitution. Cold, hard illegality, but voted on by Congress and ratified in 1913, Federal Reserve Act. So now we have a bank that the government controls. And now in 1913, it was still currency backed by silver and gold. So in those days, while the currency was backed by silver and gold, yes, indeed, a dollar could be exchanged for a certain amount of real value. So if I want to send money to Sterling, and I either do it in a note, check, whatever, negotiable instrument, I mean, it may not be that actual dollar that I have, but dollars value from my account indeed gets sent to her account, and then it's in her account that gets subtracted from mine and added to hers. Very simple math. And sometimes indeed they have to move the dollars, and sometimes the currency, sometimes the commodity itself, gold or silver, in big armored trucks or stage wagons with guys with rifles like in the old days. Yes, that had to happen right up until they took us off the gold and silver standard. And now, if you look at our dollar bills, the dollar or any of our bills, they don't say they don't say that they're good for anything except for debts. Good for all debts, public and private. It's not an asset. It's not backed by anything. You can't take it to a bank and get anything for it except another dollar. If you have a dollar bill, you get a dollar back. Why? Yeah, whatever. So they're not backed by anything. They have no value. In fact, what they really are is a debt. They're an IOU. We're going to push our debt into the future, the debt that I'm supposed to pay you, future, indefinitely. And so the Federal Reserve, it's not a reserve, it's just a funky name for a cute way to be able to print money that means nothing. There's no reserve. There's no ledger at the Federal Reserve. There's no balancing the budget because the Federal Reserve has the unlimited capacity to print fiat, or it's another word for fake currency. It just prints fake money that has no backing on anything. And when we say that in the last 4 years, we've printed more money in America than in the history of America, you understand why there must be inflation, because the more money we print, the more dollars are devalued from their purchasing power and the more dollars it takes to buy the same things. So there's no law that says that the Federal Reserve has to have limits. If the federal government wants to print money, they will print it. And when it hits the money supply, it is at its top value. It's not been trickled down into commerce or the business. So inflation hasn't risen yet. So the government gets to buy it at its maximum value. And by the time it gets trickled down to us to use through corporations and things, inflation has risen. Prices have risen. And then they tax us on it when it's at its least value, but most pain to us, to take it back out of the money supply to then try to bring inflation down for the next year. So what is the purpose of the Federal Reserve? It's basically power to the government, the ability to print as much money as they need to keep the people in line and to keep the programs that matter to them going. And when we say, oh, well, the government has to balance its budget because there's no money for taxes, the taxes don't pay for the budget. Why would taxes need to pay for anything when they have an unlimited ledger bank account that they can print as much as they want? Does that make sense to you? No. The Federal Reserve, all they're trying to do by balancing the budget is making sure that the money that they're going to have to dump into the money supply from the Federal Reserve System doesn't spike inflation. So when they say, oh, we're trying to keep the budget down, you're just trying to keep inflation down because they're printing money to make the federal government go. So when we say, well, how do banks work then? Well, if you understand that all of the banks, not private banks, but the public banks, Wells Fargo, Chase, you name it, those guys, they're all shell companies of the 12 Federal Reserve banks that are all sparse, spaced all around. I encourage you to go take a tour of a Federal Reserve Bank if you live near one. San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, any of those banks. It's fascinating to see what they do. It's not just, oh, we print the dollars. Yeah, they're doing a whole lot more there. Whole lot more. So money can be printed by the government. So if the value of the dollar is not backed by anything, is there any real need to move the dollars if I want to send sterling money? No, we don't need to do that at all. In fact, the banks don't really need to keep enough money in their little branches so that if everybody came and wanted to withdraw, because they're like, well, it's all digital. It's no big deal. We can just, if they all wanted to withdraw money, then, we would just do it digitally for them. And I don't know if you've had the experience as I regularly have, of walking into a bank and wanting to withdraw a significant amount of cash and have them say, oh, we really don't have that on hand. Well, I know you do. What you're really saying is you want to keep enough on hand for the odd customer that comes in and wants to get cash, and you don't have to tell them that you don't have it. You're just telling it to me. So that's why they request and sometimes demand that you call ahead. Yeah, that you call ahead. And then the trucks that bring the cash will bring enough. Well, where do they get that cash from? The Federal Reserve Bank, the local branches. And we used to think that those trucks transported cash from one bank to the next. And in the old days, again, that's how it used to work. But have you noticed those trucks just do deliveries? They don't pick up cash. I mean, sometimes they do, but they don't pick, unless if there's a big deposit, they don't want to keep it in the branch because of, I don't know why. Why wouldn't they keep money in a bank? But they don't. They keep it in big special safe houses. So the nature of money and how banking works has nothing to do with value. The government prints money out of the Federal Reserve, not only because it makes it easy for them to do whatever they want, but it also keeps us all in the poorhouse because by the time that money trickles down to us, it's at its least value and we get taxed at the max value. So when we're depositing money in the bank, obviously it becomes the bank's liability because they have to contractually give it back to us. But it's not our money anymore. It's the bank's money, which is why when a bank closes down and you're not able to get your money out, like, well, don't I have money in that bank? No, not really. No. Why not? Where does the money go? If I put $1,000 into a bank, where's the money go? Well, that's where the brilliance of fractional banking comes up. You may have heard this crazy term, fractional. It's not like fracking gas or anything. It's just fractional banking. And the long and the short of it is the banks under the Banking Act have the right to take that $1,000 that I put into the bank and invest it in derivatives and insurance and whatever they want, up to 10 times the value of the money I put in.
That's a lot. 10 times the value is amazing, right?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
Talk about leverage.
Yeah.
So if I need to pull that $1,000 back out, they have to go find that $1,000 from other folks because they've leveraged it out in the markets. Now, most of the time they're investing in insurance products that give them the ability to borrow against it, just like an IUL or a whole life policy. Is much more complex, but those kinds of things. And they're making money. Every time you put money into the bank, they lock in that they get automatic payments for you, and then they give you the arbitrage difference for the interest. So they're making money for every dollar you put in, even when you withdraw it. It's very, very amazing. And if you want to be in banking, this is how you get very rich, because bankers are way higher than makers in the economy, and makers are way higher than the takers. So when I write a check.
Right. Oh yeah, what happens when I write a check? That's a great. I'm one of those people who still writes checks, right? I'm so old that I used to get traveler's checks when I would go like take a trip to another state. That you would go to the bank and you would get traveler's checks, and then you would. Yeah, I thought about those in forever. I'm pretty sure they don't have traveler's checks anymore. So, but yeah,
I remember that too. I remember that going, how do these work? What?
Yeah, I remember traveling one time out of state. My grandmother took me to the bank to get traveler's checks because she told me that it was safer. And then I thought, like, but I could still lose them. Like, I'm not sure why this would actually help. But anyway.
Well, the theory is with traveler's check, if you lost them, they would still have they'd be able to reissue them because they have your capital in a bank account where they're leveraging it 10x. Right. Yeah, that's why the banks want you to put your money in the bank. It's not because it's safer. It's not safer. No. It's just they get your money and then they get to leverage it and make more money and be able. Obviously, they make a lot of money loaning. That's the primary purpose of every bank is to loan money. And I don't think we'll have time today to share to really get you mad about where that money actually comes from. But it'll suffice to say, I'm going to explain to you how the journey of a check now in the 21st century.
Okay. You need to do a little song, like How I Became a Bill. Remember we used to watch on Schoolhouse Rock about the bill, like going to the Capitol and hoping he was going to get, picked. And yeah. Well, very good, man. So I write a check. I write a check. I still write a check to my daughter, for instance, and send it to her.
Well, yeah, you could write it to me. How about that?
Okay.
So you write me a check for $100. What do I have to do in order to negotiate that check? Now you have to sign it. Now are you aware of where you sign that check and its significance?
No, but I know I sign on the bottom right-hand corner. No.
Bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Now, if you know anything about security notes or security interest certificates is what I mean to say, like certificates of share.
Oh, yeah.
The main creditor position is not in the bottom right. It's in the bottom left. Bottom left is always the creditor position. Bottom right is the debtor position or some other position, holder in due course. So why would they put the memo on a check on the left, where that's supposed to be where the big signature of the creditor is, the person who's responsible? And why do they put on the right the debtor position where you actually sign? Well, if you look at a check, and if you have a check handy while you're watching or listening, pull it out. Look carefully. Now, if you have eyes like me that don't see so well really close, you might get a magnifying glass. If you look at the check, you'll notice a couple of things. There's 7 or those 8 things that have to be present on every check to make it legitimate. I'm not going to go over all 8 of those things, but one of them is there has to be a signature of the granting party. So in this case, it's Sterling. She's going to sign. But in about the 70s, So many people were messing around with legal documents because they discovered a certain little thing called microfiche, microprint. And they could do it on paper just enough where your eyeballs really can't read it, but it's on there. So they passed laws that say if there's microprint on a document that's legal or negotiable, you have to put MP. Now, if you look on your check on the bottom right, you'll see MP. And you're like, well, does that mean that there's microprint on here that's been hidden from me? Well, it's not hidden. It's just very, very, very hard to see. It's so small. Where do you think that microprint is? Well, look carefully at your check.
Okay.
Now, you'll notice a bunch of lines on your check. There's the top line that says pay to, and then there's the next line down that says, you write in cursive the amount. And then there's a line that we talked about, the memo.
Right.
And then there's a date line. All those lines should look identical. You might even have lines under who the bank is or who your address is, whatever. But if you look at your signature line, does that look the same?
No.
Nope. It's a very different kind of line. In fact, it's not a line at all. It is text. And that text says really one of two things: authorized representative or what's another one? Signer, authorized signer, which means that Sterling signing her check means that she doesn't actually own the bank account. It's not her bank account. She's signing on behalf of the bank that she's going to move this capital, negotiate this check. So it's not her bank account. They're not her checks. She's signing under contract. The contract, the little fine print that you had when you set up your bank account that says that you get to sign as the bank's representative. It's not your money now.
Right.
So when Sterling signs it and then gives it to me, most people think it's Sterling authorizing the money to go somewhere. Actually, that's not true. So that micro little print means you and anyone else, by the way, who signs your name on that check makes it valuable if you have a private agreement with them. So if her daughter and she had a private agreement that said that her daughter could sign could sign Sterling's name on Sterling's checks, the bank and everybody else has to honor them. Even if Sterling doesn't know about it, even if the bank doesn't know about it, they still have to honor it. It gets worse. If that's not crazy enough, go look at you. You prove me wrong. You show me that line is a real line, and I'll shut up about it. But you can't because it isn't. Now I get the check. Now, what's the only thing I can do? Well, I shouldn't say that. What's the main thing that I would do so that I can negotiate the check?
You would sign the back so that you could deposit it or cash it. One of the two.
Yeah, it's actually the official word is we negotiate it. So, because, well, long story. So I have to actually, the word is endorse. I have to endorse the back of the check with my signature, signature, as we mispronounce it, but it's signature, even spelled that way. So I'm going to authorize and say that under my good name with the bank, this check is good. Not Sterling, because Sterling didn't authorize under her name. She authorized under the bank, saying, I authorize that this transaction can happen. But I'm the responsible party in the matter of depositing the check to make sure it's good. And if the check bounces, they come after me, don't they, first?
Yes.
They're going to come after me first.
Right.
And so I endorse the back. I put the check into the ATM or whatever way they do it. If you go to the teller, that thing that they run around that goes like this?
Yeah.
It does the same thing that the ATM does, which it basically takes a picture of it, front and back, puts their little digital signatures on it so that it can do whatever banking it's got to do. That then becomes the only record. The check actually can be thrown out. Once it's negotiated and put through the ATM and photographed front and back, that's now the digital representation of that check is the legal negotiation. That piece of paper can go somewhere else. It's now a receipt. So now in the bank is where it gets interesting. So let's say I'm at my bank. Let's say I'm at Wells Fargo and Sterling's at Chase. Sure. So Wells Fargo has this receipt that they go, put it in the pile. But the check, the $100 photographed, is then read by a computer. And what most people think that happens is the Wells Fargo calls Chase and says, send us the $100 from Sterling's authorized bank account. And then through digital whatever, it comes to me, her account's brought down and my account goes up. If it were 1882, yes, without the digital part. But that's not how it works at all.